Welcome to our Saturday Satsang conducted by Sri Aurobindo Society. And today we have with us Dr. Shruti Bidwaikar. We welcome her on behalf of all of all of us, and then on behalf of Sri Aurobindo Society, Chennai. Dr. Shruti Bidwaikar is a managing trustee. She is very much involved Sri Aurobindo's writings on aesthetics, literature, and culture. And she has also published a dozen papers in this field. And she is also a trust member and assistant director. And she is teaching in SACAR, Sri Aurobindo Center for Advanced Research. She is teaching Poetry of the Future, a Rhythm of Social Development. She is a postgraduate in English literature from Pune. Also, I think she is a doctorate in English literature on Sri Aurobindo's Aesthetics, Puducherry University. And she has many publications to her credit. To list a few, The Concept of Man, Woman at War, Literature and Consciousness, Appreciating Beauty in Literature, and Aurobindonian Perspective, and so on. So she's a really an Aurobindonian scholar. We welcome her, and today she's going to talk on Sri Aurobindo on Indian art. I welcome once again Dr. Shruti Bidwaikar, and I hand over this forum to you. Please.
Thank you very much, sir. I do not know if it is the customary with the Saturday sessions here that nobody comes on the camera, but even if I have one or two people, I will feel comfortable because I'm not used to speaking only on the screen. So unless it is not a problem to everyone to be on the camera.
There is no hard and fast rule. We will, those of you who like to come on the camera, you please come. Please
it will
let
help
them
me
come.
to communicate.
Yeah, sure. Instead of talking to some anonymous entity, you can talk to people.
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
So thank you very much, and I'm grateful to you for giving me this opportunity to interact with this wonderful society members, because I've been hearing about your center since many years, ever since I've joined SACAR, more than 10 years now. So a lot of known people from this center have been coming to SACAR. Mrs. Padma Ashokan is our own member, and there have been other people who always refer that Satsang goes on with this center always. So it's an honor for me to be here, and thank you for giving me this opportunity to speak on a very interesting but rarely studied topic of Sri Aurobindo, which is Indian culture. Of course, some interest is developing these days to study his works because Government of India is showing more interest in Indian culture and Indian knowledge systems, etc. But still, we have much to learn from Sri Aurobindo's approach to Indian culture, and what is the importance of art in our life, what is its value, etc. So I will give in a very brief our understanding of what I feel I learned a lot from Sri Aurobindo's writings on seeing and observing of Indian culture. So, first of all, do we have any value for art, culture, music, poetry, of all these things? Is it of any value in our lives? We ask this question because Sri Aurobindo himself asked it at one point of time when he wrote his essay, The National Value of Art. He said we have forgotten to give importance to these things because what has happened is over after we got colonized, what became important for us was to earn money, to have a comfortable living, to make everything reachable and possible for us. So he says that utility is becoming more important than something that is beautiful or what is good. So for us, utility has been taken the prime seat, prime importance in our lives. But Sri Aurobindo says that no, it was a necessary step of evolution, and he explains it in great detail why it was a necessary step. Because earlier comfort was only meant for wealthy people, for affluent people, for those who could afford, but because of the science and technology, because of the industrial evolution, this affordability reached to a much larger mass. A lot of people could afford things, could afford comfort, could think of affording comforts, and the meaning of comforts also changed for us over the years. So Sri Aurobindo says that it was an important movement in the history of humanity where utility took the center seat. It is still so. In fact, for us, many times when we see and when I was reading Sri Aurobindo's writings, everything was so true and so live for me that when we enter a house, maybe a newly constructed house or a newly inaugurated house or a shop or something, what we see is the best of furniture being brought, best of Italian furniture being brought, or whichever. I mean, nice companies and all. So by themselves, by itself, the thing is very beautiful. The thing is very comfortable, perhaps, but it may not have its aesthetic place in our lives. The artistic value of that thing by itself, the sofa might be beautiful, the painting might be beautiful, but where we are placing, why we are placing, does it gel with our temperament? We don't usually take care of those things. We just bring it because we think it is comfortable or we think it is beautiful by itself. However, he said that it's okay that it was required because once human beings are satisfied, once there is this understanding that yes, comfort is required and we have the necessary comfort, then we can think about aesthetics possibly. Here, when I'm talking of aesthetics, art, music, poetry, these are all for this. Do we have to take the questions now, ma'am, or we take it at the end, Vijay Lakshmi, ma'am? Because you raised the
No,
hand.
no. Normally, the audience will raise the questions at the end. I think somebody has by mistake raised their hand.
All right, sir. Thank you. So what I was saying that when we talk of aesthetics, art, music, poetry, everything right now I'm using interchangeably, although Sri Aurobindo has defined them and their use and their understanding differently. But as of now, for this particular talk, I would use them interchangeably. So Sri Aurobindo says that yes, there is a value of the useful or the utility of something. I mean, our lives have become utilitarian, which is fine. Now that we have understood that what is the meaning of comfort, what is the meaning of uh, beautiful, we perhaps some of us can differentiate between those things and turn towards beauty. Some of you who would have read Sri Aurobindo's National Value of Art, the very title itself is very fascinating because when he says that there is a national value to all this, not just a personal value or a spiritual value, he's talking of nation building, the importance of art and nation building. And that, of course, again, is a different topic and a very big topic. I'm not taking that topic here. But just to bring forth this importance that national art is very much valuable to bring our character out, to uh, to refine our natures. That is what Sri Aurobindo says, that art has a role to refine our natures, to bring us out of that very moralistic, very animalistic tendencies into something more refined. So that is why when we say that somebody is a lover of music, somebody is a lover of painting, even if he himself is not a painter, it doesn't matter. But if somebody can appreciate good art, then also the faculties are refined in people. So he says there is definitely that value, national value in art, and unfortunately, the education system that we have been receiving last so many years, last 100 or more years, we have not yet been taught the importance of art. We always call art as extracurricular activities. So that is a very sad part in our lives, but we hope that it is changed. Some of the people, some artists, they do change. They make art as the most important part of their lives, and that is how um, they feel. I mean, they have retained the importance of art in our lives. Now, what is Sri Aurobindo's take as we are talking on that? Uh, Sri Aurobindo himself developed the appreciation of art, he said, through his yogic uh, concentration, through his yogic sadhana. And he also said that he has visited a lot of museums, chapels, churches in when he was in England, but he did not. He was happy seeing them, perhaps, but there was nothing more to it. He said. In one of his chapters, he does refer that I have gone to all these. There were biblical stories painted, very beautiful stories. There was no way we could have found a single error in them. But then it tells the story and it stops there. Indian art is not like that. However, before going ahead with the Indian art itself, there are a couple of things we might know in a nutshell that this book called Renaissance in India, which was earlier called The Foundations of Indian Culture, was written as a response to a critic, a British critic who had completely dumped Indian culture as useless, wasteful. All Indian art was waste for him, and his name was William Archer. So Sri Aurobindo has taken him to task, if I were to say, and he has made a lot of things clear, which perhaps we as Indians who have not delved deep into our own shastras wouldn't be able to respond, perhaps. For instance, the critic says that some of the Indian temples have the architecture or the sculptures which are too filled up, too much of detailing is done in them, whether there's no space left in any one of them. So Sri Aurobindo says there is no space. It is true that you may not find gaps and spaces as you find in Japanese art. But why there are no gaps? Because Indian life is so full of abundance. Indian life demands that kind of an expression. And also, he says that any art is not divorced from the life and philosophy that the people around are living. So, our lives are full of activities, full of joy, full of abundance. And that is what the artist shows on the temple walls, that it is full of all those things that makes our culture so rich. So he says that you have not seen, the Western critic has not seen Indian culture in the correct light. He very categorically, his entire emphasis in this book, Renaissance's India, is to correct our lenses to see Indian culture. How are we seeing the work of art or music of which these other critics from outside world, from Western world, who have no understanding. They have no understanding because they don't have an exposure. That time it was politically motivated, etc. Now also it is politically motivated in many ways. But what Sri Aurobindo says is, for us as students of literature, we should understand that if we go with the lenses and the parameter of Indian art, and we go and visit a say museum in France or in Britain or in Greece, we may not be able to appreciate their art because their parameters, their ethos, their philosophy of creating art was entirely different than what we do. Similarly, when a European critic came to India to see, or in fact, it is said that William Archer never even came to India to see, maybe he just saw photographs or something. I'm not very sure about this. But if a European critic comes and he says, why so much of ritual is done in India, or Why though so much of crowding is there in India? Why such big domes are made? So they keep questioning everything. To one thing is to demolish our own confidence on our culture. Second, because they don't understand. Third, because I feel they are awestruck by the variety that they find in India. Perhaps there would be no other country where they would find such a variety from north to south, from east to west. The infinite variety, the styles, the rocks, the material used for all these things, whether it's for architecture, sculptures, or paintings, every region has its own speciality. And that, I'm sure, is mind boggling for those who are coming from outside. So Sri Aurobindo corrects this uh, perception between us, for us, saying that when you're approaching Indian art, approach it with an Indian lens, with an Indian mindset. Don't expect that, for instance, if we take the Mahabali statue, which is in Shravanbelgola in Karnataka, a very, very long statue of about, I think, 57 feet. Well, I have personally seen that statue. We have to climb many steps to climb up to that rock, and it has been carved from up towards the downside, not like any other sculpture which is started from below. So it was a rock which was being cut out, and that Mahabali statue was made. What was interesting about that statue was that there were certain things which perhaps the sculptors or the experts in art would call as deformities. Like the fingers were all same length, the toes were almost of the same length, the earlobes were longer, uh, and then the eyelids were half closed. On his body there was a creeper that was growing. So it makes one wonder, what was the purpose of making a person as big as that, as 57 feet tall, because it is not a life size image. Whereas people, those who have seen the rock, when marble cut sculptures in Europe, they always say they usually make it the life size, our own. The ribs are so beautifully seen, the muscles are seen, the cloth and their creases are so beautifully visible. So their whole motive in Europe is to create or recreate what they are seeing very, very honestly, very, very sincerely. And we do see that when we see the Pieta sculpture by Michelangelo, or we see David, perfect human carvings we see there. Very beautiful, very perfect. But here is Mahabali statue, which seemingly is not perfect. But there we get Sri Aurobindo's perspective on it. He would say that, I mean, he has not written about this, he has written in case of Buddha, but we can always use that analogy here. That the very fact that they have created Bahubali or Mahabali statue that big is because to show that he is not an ordinary human being, that he is a much more realized soul than any human being around him. So it was a need that his tall stature speaks of his tall soul, tall realization, the great realized soul that he was. Then his earlobes. Recently, a friend of mine, she said in Indian sculpture, they say that when the earlobes are big, I mean, the ear is shown as a very big one. It is said that these people are very tired, or they have been hearing a lot of painful things in their ears. So the ears have become longer. But here again, Sri Aurobindo says that he takes a different view on this, and he says, any of these realized souls, you have to show some difference from a normal human being. And what is that difference they would show? Of course, the one is the stature. Second is his ears are long, purposely to show the kind of realization. And there could be this sculpting angle that my friend told me. Then why was that creeper growing on him? So to my understanding, perhaps he was in so much of meditation, he was in so much one with the nature, that he could invite the nature to be one with him. So I would say the nature almost became one with him when he was in that meditative state. And we've seen this with the mother. When she used to go to the forest and meditate over there, all the jungle animals would come and be around her without harming her, as if she is a part of all of them. So they wouldn't harm her, and they would become one in her meditation. So I think seeing that analogy, seeing our own mother having gone through that experience, we can very well believe that Mahabali was such a realized person, realized saint, who had those qualities of a saint. And how would we show? The biggest problem is that they don't have words to write. They are not describing it in words. They don't have poetry to speak about. All they have is a stone. And Sri Aurobindo says that it is a marvel of the divine that no matter how big a philosophy is, for which you might need 1,000 lines to write, but an artist, if he has an intuition, he can draw that with a few lines and he can convey everything. So perhaps we who have not read anything about Mahabali, we come to know about him seeing just his statue. So that is a beautiful way, that is a most potent way of conveying uh, what his spiritual attainments are. We don't need to know where he was born, who has made a statue, which king made it. That perhaps is not required for our spiritual inquiry. For an archaeologist or a art scientist or art critic, it is required. But for us, we can only, as an onlooker, we can marvel at his statue, and we could feel that yes, perhaps this man was as tall, as big, as saintly as he's carved. So this is the lens which Sri Aurobindo has given us to correct it. We will in a moment come down to Gautam Buddha's painting in Ajanta. But before that, another differentiation which Sri Aurobindo gives us in the kinds of art. We are here just talking about the value. We've spoken about the value of art. We have spoken about the different lenses of art, of how Sri Aurobindo says that there is a different perspective to European art and Indian art. And there are then, he says, different ways in which we can represent art. One is an imitative one. We all know that as children, when we start making paintings or sculptures or dances or anything that, any artistic work that we start, the first instinct is to imitate. The second instinct could be, the second level could be the interpretative level, that we want to interpret. Suppose in dance, we see Radha Krishna standing in a particular pose, or we are doing a kind of a dance where Shri Krishna is stealing the makhan, the butter, he's stealing the butter, or even if it is carved out in a sculpture. Now we can interpret it in our own way. We can deliver it. For instance, how Gita Govind is performed by different artists in different ways. There is an interpretation to it. So that art becomes interpretative. And the third and the highest one, he says, is intuitive art. And that is what Indian art has been. That is what Sri Aurobindo maintains from the very beginning of his first chapter, his chapter on Indian art in the Renaissance in India. And he says that Indian art is primarily intuitive. Now, there have been objections to this, why Sri Aurobindo had to say again and again that it was intuitive. Because these Western critics raised some questions regarding the statue of Durga, which has Dashabhuja or 8 bhujas, or the Yakshas, which have big belly, or the elephant god, Sri Ganesh. So they thought that these are what savage people, that they do not know what human figure is like, what human physiology is like. Why are they creating a god out of a human being, god out of an elephant or a boar or a fish? That means they're very primitive. Their religion is very primitive. Their art is very primitive because they've not grown out of that animal stage. So again, it's such a big ignorance on their part. We know that we are talking about the Dashavatars. We are talking about the avatars which come in every form and any form, and there is an evolution in Dashavatars. That apart, when there is a Dashabhuja or an Ashtabhuja Durga that is carved or painted, with sometimes somebody paints her with lion, somebody paints her with tiger. Sometimes there is Mahishasur, sometimes it is not there. So Sri Aurobindo says that every artist receives an intuition, and he or she paints or carves or draws according to their intuition. And especially in Renaissance, he talks mostly about art, architecture, and sculpture. So he's again and again referring to these things, that if there is a Durga you see with 2 arms, or with 8 arms, or with 10 arms, it doesn't matter, because that is how the artist has perceived her. The artist has got the intuition to carve her like that. And you cannot question that intuition. Now, how do we perceive that? That perception for us comes later. But he says that there is a direct seeing of the artist. So if I want to paint something, I want to draw something, according to Sri Aurobindo, that was the process artists would be doing. They would pray, they would concentrate, and their sole motive for months together would be they would be meditating on that Durga to bring it out in a stone. It is not a joke to imagine that he has got a vision of that Ashtabhuja Durga, or that benevolent Durga, but a Durga who is killing the Rakshasa, to bring that into a stone or into a painting. Stone is the most difficult of the art materials, he says. It is very rigid, but at the same time, when it gives form, it gives the most beautiful form. So Sri Aurobindo says that there is a difficulty in the medium with which the sculptor is working, but he has to transfer that inspiration, that intuition, that devotion for Durga into that stone. And it is a very, very difficult task, which cannot be done if one is not in meditation, if one is not intuited, if one is not inspired by that deity whom he is carving, or anything, even the Dwarpal if he is carving. He has to be very, very inspired by that, and constantly inspired. It is not something that can come and go. He has to be in that flow for days and months together. And that is how the impact is created. If we go to any of the South temples, many of the South temples, I would say Tanjore Temple or Vredeshwar Temple, Ganga Konde Cholapuram, or we go to the Hoysala architecture, the fine work that they have done in granite, it is unimaginable for us, even with all the machinery that we have today, because we have lost to a large extent that intuitive capacity. Our workers have lost, they've become workers, they have no more remain artists. So that time, perhaps the artists were doing it. And of course, there was a whole school, there was a whole structure, that there was a main Raj Shilpi who used to do all those kind of things. And then he would tell some people, you have to carve this, you have to carve this. But still there was a collectivity, there was a central inspiration that was running through all this. And for us also, when we plan for in our own house, when we want to do any work of art, do we have that inspiration? Do we have that intuition with which we are doing? Or is it just a superficial intuition or a superficial inspiration where we feel that, oh, wow, really, I'm getting this kind of an inspiration and I should paint, I should write poetry, and it is some kind of intuitive poetry. It may not be so intuitive, because it may not last beyond us also. It may die with us. Whereas these artists of whom we do not know, whose names we do not know, they have survived beyond centuries and centuries. They have survived, and we still marvel of what they have done. So these are the three kinds of arts about which Sri Aurobindo speaks: imitative, interpretative, and intuitive. And he keeps intuitive at the highest. Now, how do we perceive these things? We've spoken about Mahabali statue, but Sri Aurobindo gives a very systematic step, or I would say a systematic window into these art works, of how do we perceive them. Now, one can say, if I were a student of literature or art criticism, perhaps I would have had some rules. If the sculpted lady is standing like this, it means it speaks like this. If it is carved in stone, it means like this. If it belongs to this period, it means they would have carved out these stories. That is a very historical, archaeological, culture critic kind of way of seeing it. But Sri Aurobindo says that Indian art, in fact, I would like to read this thing. A great Oriental work of art does not easily reveal its secret to one who comes to it solely in a mood of aesthetic curiosity or with a considering critical objective mind, still less as the cultivated and interested tourist passing among strange and foreign things. This is what I was really struck because, especially being in Pondicherry and being around, surrounded by quite a few temples, temple cities around, 99.9 people who come and they ask us, well, what is there to see around in Pondicherry or around Pondicherry. We invariably end up telling them it's Mahabalipuram or Chidambaram or other temples around Kanchipuram, etc. But then that when we ask them what is it that you want to see, they have that curiosity that, oh yeah, there is an ancient temple we would just like to see. So that is the tourist mentality, the tourist curiosity that they have. Some people have a uh, aesthetic curiosity or critical objective mind. So critically objective mind. Some people, they might just come thinking, okay, I have seen something in Gujarat or I have seen something in Karnataka. Now let me see what is there in Tamil Nadu. Is it as beautiful as what I have seen, or is it less beautiful? Is it as old as what I have seen, or is it less? I mean, it is more recent. So there is that kind of a curiosity. Another people, like for instance, until I, not that I have learned, I can practice what Sri Aurobindo has taught. It needs a lot of meditation and patience. But what I go with an aesthetic curiosity at times as to what if the same Durga is carved in Mahabalipuram and the same Durga is carved in Chidambaram, or if she is carved in Hoysala architecture and sculpture, how would that be? So there's an aesthetic curiosity. Beyond that, I don't have the capacity to go. But Sri Aurobindo says that Indian art will not reveal its secret to anybody and everybody just like that. So what do we do? But it has to be seen in loneliness, in the solitude of oneself, in moments when one is capable of long and deep meditation and as little weighed as possible with the conventions of material life. So essentially, if we remember the line from Savitri, of what Sri Aurobindo says, that when in a quieter moment, all the guests are left outside, all the problems are left outside. That is the time when we have a touch with our soul, with the psychic being. Similarly, that moment when we are with ourselves, when we are alone with that monument or that sculpture, and in those moments of long and deep meditation, there's a possibility that that art would reveal itself. It is not a bucket list that we just tick and go and say that I have seen Mahabalipuram, that I have seen Chidambaram. Some of my friends around my place, they sometimes say that no, I would like to go to these places again and again and experience something, find out something. They say every time we go there, we find something new, possibly archaeologically, but there would be something that the stones could tell them if we are open enough. So Sri Aurobindo says that you have to go with that kind of a quiet mind, a mind which can receive rather than impose one's own prejudices, one's own pre-given understanding onto that sculpture. For instance, now that we've spoken about the Mahabali statue, when I went to see it, I did not know anything. I just saw and came back thinking, yeah, that it's a nice marvel that has been done by our ancients, and it's still standing, and it's been every day puja is done for that, and it's of great significance to the Jain people. Beyond that, I had no understanding of that. But when I read of Sri Aurobindo, I felt how beautiful, important, culturally important it is for us. And it doesn't matter which religion it belongs to, who worships him or who does not even worship him. It is important to see what the vision of that creator was, vision of that artist was. That is where we have to see. So that is Sri Aurobindo giving us the lens or giving us a hint to say that be quiet, meditate upon the given art if it is worthy of meditation. Now, there are mediocre arts also, Sri Aurobindo says. And unfortunately, in one of Mother's writings, also, I said, she says, everywhere it's a commercialization and vulgarization. So we have forgotten the difference between good art and bad art. In fact, in the news recently, it was quite a disturbing thing that came. One person, he just took a blank wall. He pasted a banana peel on that. He just pasted it, and he said it has become a work of art. Now, it is something, I don't know. Perhaps there might be people who might say, "Oh, yes, it is a great work of art because he thought about it." But that is not an art about which we are speaking. It was surely not an intuitive thing. So here, what we are talking of, especially in terms of our ancient Indian art, especially because we do not know how modern minds work, or we perhaps know if there are artists, they would know. So um, when we see Indian art from Indian lenses, and we have that meditative poise that Indian art will reveal itself to us. We said we will speak about the Buddha's explanation that is given by Sri Aurobindo himself. He has taken great pains, and he has taken time to speak about the Ajanta painting, where Gautam Buddha, who had realized, the great heights, he is coming with a begging bowl to his wife and son. The son is still very small. And Sri Aurobindo beautifully explains, he says, look at the vision of the artist. We all know that Buddha was, when he started, he was a normal human being, and he could have been shown equivalent to his wife in height when the painting is mentioned. But he says, no, the artist saw the greatness of Buddha. He wanted to show Buddha as a greatly realized soul. So he made his stature much bigger as compared to his wife and child. Then he said that look at his face and his eyes. It's absolutely calm. It's absolutely unperturbed. It is joyful. It is in the meditative state. And to make that, imagine to make a Buddha in that state, what meditation the artist might have had to do. Then he says, look at his robe, what Buddha is wearing. It hardly has any details. So Sri Aurobindo says, why does it not have, like we have details in the European art, lot of details of every crease in every painting, even the facial crease is shown, the cloth crease is shown. Why did the artist not show it? Was he not capable of doing it? Did he not have the enough technique to do it, or the enough means to do it? No, it was not so. We all know that the paintings that were done in the Ajanta caves were done by possibly the monks there. And they were meditating on the Buddha. And what was important for them was not the outer robe, the clothes that he was wearing. It was the expression on his face, his wife's face, and his son's face that was important. The stature of Buddha being that big was important. So that is where we see how we interpret our own paintings and our own art. And again, Sri Aurobindo says, I would like to, in fact, point out a couple of differences of how Western art and Indian art, they are different. So what do we get attracted by in Western art, in European art especially, because Sri Aurobindo does mention European art, and in European art he does include Italy, France, Greece also. So he says they are attracted by form, outer form. How faithfully have we transferred the form into the form of art? Then there is an appeal to some kind of an emotional, intellectual, and aesthetic suggestion, he says. We might find it very beautiful. There would be a lot of symmetry, a lot of order, a lot of balance, and that is what, in fact, Greek art was meant about. It was order and balance. Everything had to be being into like a Pythagoras theorem, or a kind of a square or circle or triangle where it would fit, and you would say, okay, this is very mathematical. So their beauty became mathematical to a large extent. And then what Sri Aurobindo again says is that they confine the soul to the body. So if there is an appeal to the soul, it is confined to the body. Now, I cannot explain this further because I think we need to study a lot of more art to be able to understand this, Western art to be able to understand this. But what we would say is that even if we are seeing an image of Jesus Christ, we see, yes, we know he is a God. We know he's a realized a person. So we see him like that. That's it. Beyond that, I do not know how much we can interpret at times. I'm not saying all paintings because I have not seen many. On the contrary, what does Indian art look like? For us, form does not exist except as a creation of the spirit. This is exactly what Sri Aurobindo is explaining when he talks about the Ajanta paintings of the Buddha. That the form does not exist. Exist in the sense it is only an outer shell to show what is there inside the Buddha. Even for his wife and child, if you see the wife is ornamented there, she has a beautiful smile on her face. She is no more longing for her husband. The child is happy to see the father, but again, there is no longing. So there is a change that has come over them also. Then every physical suggestion is a hint and a symbol of something deeper. Every physical suggestion is a hint and a symbol of something deeper. Again, as we mentioned, the height of Buddha, the lobes being, ear being longer, the clothes being flowy. So there is a fluidity in that, but at the same time, there is a deeper suggestion that clothes and this outer appearance is not all that important. What is important is what he has realized inside. And essentially, all our artists, all the great art in India, whether it is in painting or in sculpture, is the soul's expression in form. So it is the soul expressing in form. Here, the other way around, it was the soul is confined into a form, whereas here is the soul which is expressing itself in a form. That is the biggest difference between the two art forms. So Sri Aurobindo is very categorical in this. Some of the art critics or teachers, they have even complained, saying that Sri Aurobindo has been very partial to Indian culture, Indian paintings or Indian art. He has praised them too much beyond as much as they need. It is not that European art is not good. Sri Aurobindo never said European art is not good. He never demeaned their art. He only said that there is a way in which Western art is done, there is a way in which Eastern art is done, and we should not unnecessarily take one lens to the other or one interpretation to the other and spoil the game. When we go to West, we should see their art in their glory, and when we see the East, we should see Indian art in our own glory. Let us not confuse. Let us not unnecessarily degrade each other for the lack of understanding of each other's art. It is possible that we don't understand. If we go to Africa, if we go to Japan, we may not understand the art there, but we need not degrade it, because again, Japanese art also has its um, own fervor, own system. They play a lot with spaces, as against India, where we are mostly into a lot of ornamentation. But there also we know that our art is based on a philosophy. For a very, because we don't have much time now, but just to give you an example, that when we go to our temples, we have 7 doors or 7 dwar, or 9 dwar, or 5 dwar, and maybe bigger, very, very big temples have these all 9 kinds of uh, doors before we reach the Sanctum Sanctorum. And in my observation, I have seen that most of the temples in South, especially, the outside is very much decorated, ornamented, and it has the depiction of the entire human as well as non-human life. Because Sri Aurobindo says our ancients were so great that they knew that there is not just the earthly world, there is a world beyond this world also. So that is where they said that they were able to see the bhutas and the pishachas and the goblins and the jinns and everything. So that was also depicted. Animals were depicted. All sorts of human activities were depicted, including art and science and plowing the field to cooking to giving birth. Everything was depicted on that. As we go inside the temple, the decorations become lesser and lesser. Again, a very significant thing that when we go within ourselves, the whole architecture, or within ourselves, it becomes quieter and quieter. There are lesser distractions. So even in a temple, when we go inside, there are lesser distractions. There should be lesser distractions. And if we are still stuck with outside, then maybe we are not yet ready to reach the Garbhagriha. But many a temple I have seen, the Garbhagriha is sometimes just empty. It has nothing. Either it has just a shivling or a statue inside, and there's hardly any ornamentation on its walls or its pillars or anything. But outside, there's a full effulgence of art. So we have both, and our temples themselves reflect a great philosophy. And then the philosophy which was prevalent in those times when the temples were built, whether it's the Advaita philosophy or the Dvaita or any kind of philosophy in which we believe on whichever deity we believe. So there is this beautiful connection between our life, our philosophy, our art, and its representation. And for us who are so remote by thousands of years, sometimes 500 years, sometimes 800 years, we do not know sometimes who has made those temples or those sculptures. And of course, we know only the kings who have gotten them made. We don't even know the artist's name who have done that. So one thing is, it's such a selfless work that they have left for us. And if we go with the tourist mentality with our cameras and our selfies, then we are perhaps doing a disrespect to these things. We have to pay its due to these places to go and just, at least I would say, both thank the artist who has done such a beautiful work. So with that, I would say if there are any comments or questions, there is much to go about here, but I've given everything in a nutshell. And just to again revise whatever we have done, that there is a national value of art, that art is important for nation building. Sri Aurobindo has emphasized it builds our character, it refines our nature and our personality. Then there are these lenses of Indian and Western art or European art to see what is the difference between the two kinds of art. Then to whom will Indian art reveal itself? That is not to a tourist, not to a person with curiosity, not even with one who is aesthetically interested, but to the one who is willing to meditate on such kind of art. We also talked about the different kinds of art which are imitative, interpretative, and intuitive. And we spoke about the examples of Bahubali statue and the Buddha painting of um, Ajanta. And that is how we see that Indian art has much to explore, and we have much to learn from Sri Aurobindo on how to see Indian art, in what perspective do we see that. And every time we go to a new monument or to the same old monument, we would be able to gain something new out of it. So with that, I stop here. If there are any comments or questions, I would be happy to take. Thank you.
Any questions are there? Any comments or observations to be shared? You please, you're welcome to do. Yes. Yes. Priya, yes, please.
You hear me?
Yeah, Priya, yes, please.
Okay. Good evening, sir. Good evening, ma'am. Good evening, all. Thanks for the wonderful presentation. We understood from the listening art in the form of stones and statues. But art is holistic with other things also, to my understanding. Like be it a painting or music or dance or uh, but today's narration was more with the uh, sculptures, the stones, to my understanding. So, uh, what are the other dimensions of the art so that we can get to know more? Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, ma'am. Just a clarification here, like in the beginning of this talk, I mentioned that I'm using art, music, poetry, aesthetics interchangeably. So, of course, I gave the examples of sculptures and paintings because Sri Aurobindo has written mostly on them. He has hardly written anything on dance and music. But also, when he says that all art is intuitive, when he says that all art needs an interpretative eye or an intuition or a meditation to understand, we get that hint from his writings and mother's writings. For instance, um, when we go for a music concert or a dance, a beautiful concert in dance, what do we perceive there? Is the artist who is dancing is completely lean or is completely taken up by the bhava that he's presenting? He's completely representing that facet, that god or that story that he or she is presenting, or she is dancing to the tune of the audience or what audience would like. Would they clap if I'm dancing? We would be able to perceive the difference there. It's a performing art about which, as I said, Sri Aurobindo has not written much. But this difference we have been taught by our elders here in Pondicherry with whom I've spoken. And if you know Shobha Didi, she was here as a dancer in the ashram. And the kind of guidance that mother has given to her of how you should dance, what you should bring about in your dance, the flexibility in your dance. So when Sri Aurobindo talks about the sculpture or anything, he says the medium is rigid, but there is a lot of suggestion and fluidity in that stone. Similarly, when we talk of dance, so the mother also she told Shobhadi that when you're dancing, let your body flow with the dance because body has its own way of expressing. So that is where I think we can take hints from mother, that body will tell you how it wants to dance to a certain music that is being played. And second big parameter that we've been taught is by the mother, that if a music or a dance excites us or there's a vital excitement in us, then surely it is not of that intuitive level. If it makes you very calm and poised, that you don't even feel like clapping after the whole performance is over, then surely the dancer has conveyed or the musician has conveyed to us, and we have received. Perhaps the whole hall is clapping, but we don't feel like clapping also because we're so taken up by that performance or whatever we have seen just now. So that is where I feel we get the guidance from Sri Aurobindo's and mother's writings for the performing arts also. If I've answered it well, otherwise, if you have any other question or any clarification, you can.
Thank you very much, ma'am. Thanks for the explanation.
Thank you.
Yes, Radharani ma'am.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for arranging this different topic speech. Thank you, Shruti madam. You explained so well. And about Mahabali statue, I think you meant Komadeshwar. Am I right? This Mahabali statue, from where it is? It is in Shravana Belagola?
Yes, Shravan Belagola.
Okay, madam. Yes, because Mahabali is in Kerala also. So I wanted to confirm it. And about the statue, you said, explained it, how it is tall and how it is, why the creeper is on it. For that, you gave interpretation that all were very, very beautiful. Every artist draw with intuition he perceived. In that, you said about Durga Mata on lion and tiger. Then that time I remembered Savitri prayed to one Durga Mata carved on a stone by Satyavan in that Savitri book. That I remembered. Yes, that is something is there. Then Sri Aurobindo has brought the art in words, I feel. In Savitri, wherever we read, we can imagine things and so beautiful. The nature and all explained in such a way. It's like we are seeing an art in front of us. It was so beautiful. Three types of thing you said. No, I wanted to write it down. Only I have written intuitive. What are the other two?
Interpretative. First is imitative.
Okay, imitative art. Okay.
Intuitive. Interpretative.
Interpretative. Yeah. Imitative, interpretative, intuitive. Yes, yes, madam. Thank you. And so many new information we came to know. Very, very different information. Next time, whenever I see an art, I won't be saying with the normal way what I used to say. I will see in a different way with little patience so that the art will inform us what it is. That's very nice. Art is a soul expression in the form you said. If we don't understand, don't degrade also, you said. That's a very, very golden word. We have to take it. And the temple, what you compared in the end, outside how decorative and the inside how peaceful, and comparing it to our life philosophy, it was too great. Thank you so much once again, ma. Thank you.
Yes, Venkata Subramaniam, sir.
Yeah, good
AVS.
evening, sir. Good evening, Madam Shruti, Madam. Your talk was excellent. I could say, because I also have been visiting so many temples. This is a new perception I observed. From the outside, a lot of decoratives are there. In the sanctum, nothing is there. It was wonderful observation, Madam, and thank you. And also you said about imitative, intuitive, and interpretation by Aurobindo. That is also excellent, Madam. I would like to have, what do you call, many more lectures in future. Thank you very much, Madam. Divine Mother's
Thank you.
grace and Bhagwan Sri Aurobindo's grace.
Thank you, sir.
Anybody else would like to share? Yes, Asavan share. Yes, please.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, madam. Madam, your subject is a very oceanic subject. It's a, I can, this can be an introductory talk, I think. So we are expecting more talks on this series, a series of talks on this. Because as you said, it is interchangeable now. So it's a very vast ocean-like topic. It was a very impressive one. And I was rather surprised to hear, maybe I am the one who does not know about this. That remark of William Archer, it was his deprecatory remark about our sculptures that inspired or rather provoked Sri Aurobindo to write on foundations of Indian culture. This is the first time I'm hearing about it. Like this, so many things you had introduced us to the new topics. And I was rather impressed when you said about these stones depicting the art, not only art, but that spirituality in the sculptor himself. Shall I share a few things from Sri Aurobindo's workings, writings, if you permit me?
Yes, please. Yeah.
Yes, sir. That is a stone goddess. That is a poem written by Sri Aurobindo on the bank of Narmada River. When you saw that statue in a town of gods housed in a little shrine, from sculptured limbs the god had looked at me, a living presence, deathless and divine, a form that harbored all infinity. And in Savitri, in the very first canto, symbol dawn, he has written like this: the darkness failed and slipped like a falling cloak from the reclining body of a god. So he is giving a picture of that, and it's more artistic. These words themselves become an art. I think being an ace in that field, you would have also cherished this. Thank you very much for a very, very, very interesting talk. And I hope that our branch and particularly our chairman will be arranging a series of talks on this subject from your good sense. Thank you, madam. Thank you very much, chairman.
Thank you. So I think we can wind up.
Sure. I think there is one more person.
Yeah, please. Anybody else?
He has raised the hand, so I thought.
I think maybe by mistake. Okay.
Just one small thing that I would like to add here to two of the members who mentioned that there is the whole sculpture and words in Savitri. Yes, of course. As we mentioned, I mean, in the beginning, as I mentioned, art, music, poetry, everything comes in when Sri Aurobindo talks about art. And the way he has described the whole in the idea of intuition, of how poetry is written and how poetry is to be perceived, again, is a very different, vast subject of study. So that itself is a, something like I got the opportunity to study during my PhD. But what you're saying is very right, that it is a full picturization, not just an imagination, but when we read Savitri, it is as if carved in front of our eyes. So that is there, and I even found some references to Sri Aurobindo's writing about temple. I mean, of course, he was talking about how Ashwapati is scaling those heights, but then when he talks about the temples, he talks about the kind of gopurams, the what is carved out on that gopuram, or he doesn't use the word gopuram, but we can very well see that it's a rock cut temple which has the Garuda, and it has the all sorts of beings on it being carved. So that is what is he's scaling in his yoga. So very beautiful descriptions, of course, Savitri and Sri Aurobindo's poetry, the stone goddess you mentioned. Then we have the hilltop temple of Sri Aurobindo, which is again his vision of seeing a goddess in Pune. So that again is very beautiful. So definitely there are many things, and Savitri is, of course, being studied and read by your group and many other groups. And I do not know if Sri Aurobindo's poems are being read. But Indian culture is what I thought was not touched upon at all. And Shivakumar sir also suggested that I should take up this, because this has not been taken up by many. But yeah, thank you again for giving me this opportunity to interact with all of you. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you, Shruti ji. In fact, it was we got a new perspective after hearing your talk in appreciating the art. You have started with differentiating between the utility and the aesthetic aspects of things we handle in our life. Many things we handle as a matter of a utility rather than in an aesthetic sense. And Sri Aurobindo has talked about the national value of art, and how a nation derives its value from the kind of arts it portrays. And he also spoken that how the art refines our nature, and Indian art especially is enmeshed in our cultural life, and especially our parameters of appreciation is different. And we have an infinite variety of arts, which is mind-boggling to the Westerners. They may not be able to appreciate the infinite variety ingrained in our art forms, and that's why they have failed to appreciate the richness behind these art forms. And therefore, our art, if you want to really appreciate the Indian art, it should be approached with the Indian mindset. And you have talked about Mahabali statue, how the tall stature of statue speaks of the tall inner realization of the person who has been sculpted. And here you have talked about how the nature became one with him, became a part of him by the symbolic engraving of the creeper on the body of the statue. And we have also spoken of three kinds of arts. Of course, one is imitative, that's a basic level. Another is interpretative art. And of course, the highest form of art is an intuitive art, which is the characteristic of our Indian art. And because every artist receives an intuition, what he creates is based on his perception and inspiration. So it's not something mental, it's something beyond the mind. Whatever he creates, it's not on the mental plane, is descended from the higher planes. That's what we find in all our temples, in all the art forms we find. In fact, what Sri Aurobindo has stated that art, music, and poetry are intuitive in their origin. True art, true music, and true poetry are intuitive in their origin. Therefore, while appreciating art, mere aesthetic curiosity is not enough. We should go with what Sri Aurobindo says. You also highlighted that we should go with a quiet and receptive mind, so that we can perceive the vision of the creator. Western art, no, they are attracted by outer form. That's why the outer form is so precise. Where the limitation is that the soul is confined to the outer body. The outer form becomes its limitation. Whereas Indian art, the form exists except as an outer shell to carry the soul within. Here, the soul element carries more significance than the outer form. This difference here very nicely made out. Soul's expression in form. Therefore, what we should do is, like how the Westerners are unable to appreciate our art forms because they come with a different lens. When we go to other countries, in order to appreciate their art, we should not go with our mindset. We should go with a different mindset suited to the locale. And also you've spoken about how our temples are constructed. More physical and more of life forms in the outer structure. Whereas when we go into the sanctum sanctorium, we find less distractions because it carries the essence of the entire structure. It is there in the essence in the sanctum sanctorium, where we find only the concentrated structure, where we don't find any distractions. So many things. In fact, after hearing your talk, if at all, whenever we come across any art form, any creation, whenever we visit any temple, we go with the right perspective. This is a new revelation for us, and so much Sri Aurobindo has talked about Indian art, which we came to know about through your lecture. Thank you very much for having participated in our satsang. And as many of our listeners expressed their wish that you should participate more and more in our satsang, I would rather suggest that you can conduct a series of talks, maybe spread over, not every month, maybe once in 2 months or once in 3 months, a series of lectures on Indian art forms, since you have done research on that, in Sri Aurobindo's perspective. Once again, I thank you very much on behalf of Sri Aurobindo Society, Chennai, and on behalf of all the devotees who have assembled here. Thank you very much. And this event will conclude with prayer music.